Yeah, we're going to put the sixth seal in a local moving van and haul it across town. What do you have in the back of the truck, sir? It's just the sixth seal of the book of Revelation, officer. Step out of the van and put your hands on the hood. Yeah. Yeah, we're not actually going to transport the sixth seal, but I think we should move it. I'm going to explain why in this video. If we do, it will bring into focus what we're waiting for and the enormity of the moment. I always knew it was big. I knew what we were waiting for is big. It's even bigger, as you will see if we move the sixth seal to its appropriate location. Speaking of waiting for the event, so unbelievably, I'm still getting comments in the comment section. Not many, but a few. But if I get a few comments in the comment section, that means a bunch of people who didn't comment also believe it. The comment goes something like this: well, 11/11 passed. What are you thinking now? What am I thinking now? What I've always thought. I have never pointed to November 11th as the day. I have pointed to November 11th as the beginning of a year's window that I believe God is showing us. If you don't believe me, here's what I said in the previous video when I was wearing that red shirt. As we wait for November 11th, 2022, and what I believe is the countdown, a year or less of when God is about to move. Others believe something's going to happen tomorrow. That's not my thinking. I can only go with what he has shown me and what he has shown this channel. And I believe that is what he is showing us from November 11th, 2022 to November 11th, 2023. High, ultra high, extremely high watch days. Were you so enamored by the red shirt you didn't hear what I was saying? It's not fair to call me out on something I didn't say. I mean, you can call me out on something I did say, and by the way, that happened too. Laszlo. Listen, he makes a good point. I mean, he elaborated his point. He was upset with something that I said. I shouldn't have said it now that in recollection. And he left. And, but not before leaving a beautiful comment that was well crafted. He makes his points very clear. Here's what he said. MacArthur is the real deal. I'm out of here. And I'm sick about it. I'm sick about it. My goal when I put this channel together was that I would have an audience comprised only of opinionated, easily offended, modern day sons of thunder. That's who I hoped. And the captain of that team just left, Laszlo. We're going to miss Laszlo. And I don't know how to replace Laszlo. Well, maybe with this, a barking dog. Isn't it amazing? In a video where I criticize John MacArthur, he leaves because I didn't criticize him quite enough. The rodeo, it's the gift that just sits there stinking in your house, smoke billowing out, and every 15 or 20 minutes an alarm goes off from the darn thing. The rodeo crowd. All right, let's talk about moving the sixth seal. Now, I tell you what, the three event lines, they stay. I mean, there is no doubt about the fact that the three event lines are appropriate. But I have always said that the top line is the top event line is the one that is, I don't quite see as clearly. The other two are as crystal clear as it's possible to be. The God line, it begins in heaven, it ends in heaven. It's all about the things he is going to bring in the final moments of planet Earth, what Jesus calls the testing that is about to come on the whole world. The third line is all about the evil empire, Satan. Satan, who's always had it in for God's seed, who gets thrown out of heaven, and the rise of the Antichrist, and the mark of the beast. And I disagree with MacArthur if he said you take the mark of the beast, it's okay. No, it is not okay. No, it is not okay. Someone run and tell Laszlo. I agree. The mark of the beast is a death penalty. Anybody who says it isn't is wrong. But back to the topic. See, the rodeo crowd's getting in my head, folks, a little bit. Because I can't stand them. And I'm supposed to love my enemies. Oh, okay. If Laszlo shows up thirsty, I'll give him some water and I'll throw some food at him. Get it, eat it, and get out of here. Fulfilled my Christian obligation. No, it's the top line that I had trouble with. What does it represent? Clearly, it's an event line. It's telling its story, but I wasn't sure what the story was. And more importantly, probably, why, after we see the sixth seal, which is clearly the day of the Lord, why do we see the 144,000 being sealed? That was a mystery to me, because the angel says in that particular part of his vision, he tells the other angels, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees until we have sealed our servants. Well, that means they have to be sealed back here early on before the first trumpet. So why are we seeing them being sealed at the very end? I assumed it was some sort of interlude look back, but for what purpose? And so after they're sealed, John looks into heaven and he sees the Gentile nation standing there. So the conventional wisdom of prophecy teachers has always been, well, the 144,000 are going to be super missionaries who go out and bring in the end time harvest. I always knew that was not what is going on here, because that would mean that the age of the Gentiles, the times of the Gentiles, never comes to an end. It just continues on to the very end. Plus, when we see the 144,000 again later in the book of Revelation, they're in Israel. They're in Jerusalem. They're not going into all the nations. They're in Israel. Plus, why are they called first fruits? What are they the first fruits of? I didn't quite get what was going on. Also, why is that top line separate from the other two? The other two are inside the seventh seal. Why is that separate? Well, in the past, I've said maybe we should just ignore the seals and their numbers and just get the document open and just take it at what we read. Let's forget about the seals. That may have been an argument of convenience because I didn't have an answer, so I said, let's ignore it. So there were some serious concerns that I had about the top line. And after praying about it, I decided, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do what I suggested the church should have done with the 7 letters to Asia Minor, which is come up with a scenario where Christ is right and you'll have the right scenario, because he's not going to be wrong. And if they had done that, they would have hit on the fact that those letters are to the global church on earth right before end times begin. So I said, apply that same logic to this problem. Find a perfect scenario that will answer all of those problems, and maybe you have the answer. I found the perfect scenario. The perfect scenario is fairly simple to follow, but it will come with 2 conditions at the end. And that's where you'll have to decide whether or not you can accept those 2 conditions. Again, the reason this is important is if we move it, it's about to magnify and amplify the event we're about to experience here on planet Earth, the event we are now waiting for. As I mentioned in the previous video very clearly, we are in high watch days between now and next November 11th. Somewhere in there, God is about to move. That's what I believe he is showing us. So that's why this is important. Here's the perfect scenario that makes all those problems go away. It starts with the 5th seal. The 5th seal, the martyrs are under the altar and they're crying out to God, asking when he is going to avenge their blood. And they are told this: then a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them that they should rest a little while longer until both, okay, 2 conditions have to be met here, until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who would be killed as they were was completed. So they're waiting for a number for Christians, non-martyred Christians, and martyrs. 2 groups of people that have a number attached to them. They're waiting for that number, which sounds, of course, remarkably like what Paul said about the times of the Gentiles, that when the full number of Gentiles comes in, the blindness begins to fall off Israel, and all Israel will be saved eventually. Jesus talked about the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled. They're talking in the fifth seal about the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled. So if the book of Revelation is pointing to an event, a future event from seal 5's perspective, wouldn't you think it's logical that we will see that event conclude, that it will come about at some point in the book of Revelation? And I'm going to suggest to you that we should expect it in the same line that it's brought up in. And I'm even further going to suggest to you that the very next event is exactly that, the full number coming in. Seal 6. Listen. When he opened the sixth seal, behold, there was a great earthquake. Boom. There it is. The full number has just been reached. This is what we've been waiting for, and that earthquake represents a resurrection rapture event. That's the Gentile church leaving. And as you can see further on, we see stars falling from heaven. As we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, when Satan is cast out as we go up, they're coming down. It will be seen as stars falling from heaven. This is the time of the Gentiles coming to an end. That's why in a second, when John looks into heaven, he's going to see the Gentile church standing there. It has been completed. Between the sixth seal and John looking into heaven, we naturally see the sealing of the 144,000. This is what Paul said would happen. When the full number of Gentiles comes in, the blindness of Israel begins to dissipate, and eventually all Israel will be saved. We see the sealing of the 12,000 from each tribe of Israel. That's why they're first fruits. They are the first fruits of the next and final program in God's mysterious plan, which in this case is going to be to graft back into the olive tree the branch that is the nation of Israel. And these people, these men or boys, are the first fruits of that endeavor. The program has changed. The baton has been handed off. The Gentile church has to be taken out of here. They have finished and completed our duty. We have finished and completed our duty, and now it's back to the focus on Israel. Therefore, when we see this top line, I have it named the distress of nations. Really, it should be named the times of the Gentiles or the church age. That's what it's representing. That's why it's not part of the two event lines in the seventh seal, because they represent the next program where it's all about Israel. This is why we see the 144,000 in Jerusalem following the Lamb. They are saved, and soon all Israel will be saved. That's the program. This phase is coming to an end. The times of the Gentiles. That's what we're waiting for. What makes this very special is that, and here come the two conditions that you need to see, because we have to move this line. This line is misplaced with what I've just said. You can't seal the 144,000 at the very, very last second. That isn't going to do Israel any good. The times of the Gentiles comes to an end way before the very last. I had lined up the sixth seal because of its earthquake with the earthquake in the seventh trumpet and the seventh bowl of wrath, when in fact I should have lined it up with the earthquake at the event that ends the half hour of silence in heaven. It corresponds to that moment. And the two conditions that have to be accepted when we do move it are this. This is a day of the Lord event. So when you look at it, you'll think initially, well, wait a second. How can the day of the Lord be back there? Shouldn't the day of the Lord be at the end? The day of the Lord will also happen at the end. There's more than one day of the Lord. There have been days of the Lord in the Old Testament. The classic definition of day of the Lord is when God directly intervenes into the affairs of man. When Peter talks about the day of the Lord, he talks about the earth and the heavens disappearing, vaporizing. Well, that's not going to happen anywhere along these lines. It will happen at the very end of the millennial kingdom. So there'll be a day of the Lord at that time as well. But up front, there is also a day of the Lord. I'm fine with that because Paul always talked about the rapture of the church being connected to a day or the day of the Lord. They're all the day of the Lord. It's the day of the Lord. And that is why we see it here in place at the beginning. We are technically, literally waiting for the day of the Lord, although there will be another day of the Lord at the very end, at the seventh trumpet and the seventh bowl of wrath. There'll be another day of the Lord at the end of the millennial kingdom when the heaven and earth do disappear and we receive a new heaven and earth. So that doesn't bother me. It just makes the event that we are about to witness much bigger than I'd expected. This is going to be a devastating event on planet Earth. This explains why during the progression of events that we saw over the summer develop, they were always being compared to the flood, a massive destructive event. What we're waiting on, besides our rapture, obviously, which begins the sixth seal, it is going to be a devastating flood-like event, and it is out of the ashes of that event that Satan, now on earth, builds his kingdom. That's what it looks like to me. The other condition that has to be accepted is that the first 5 seals are already open. I've been fine with that for years. That's been a consideration of mine anyway. When you look at the first 2,000 years of recorded history, make that first 1,500 to 2,000 years of recorded history, and the last 2,000 years, the church age, when you look at wars and the number of deaths and the intensity of the wars and the number of wars and famines and pestilences, it doesn't compare. It's day and night. Something happened from the first century on. Wars increased dramatically, exponentially. Famines, which were rare in the first 1,500 years of recorded history, became commonplace, and so did epidemics and pandemics. They were almost unheard of in the first 1,500 to 2,000 years. They're off the charts over the last 2,000 years, along with economic distress, and of course, martyrs began in the first century. So I have no problem with the first 5 seals already being opened. You may have a problem with that. It depends. But I don't want to make this contentious. I don't want, given the time that we're living in and the urgency of the time that we're living in, I don't want this to be a distraction to you. I want it to be a clarification so you can see the event that's coming upon the earth is enormous. And fitting the 6th seal here feels like when you're assembling something and you're trying, it just doesn't feel right. And you look at the directions again and you go, wait a second, and you move the thing that you're trying to get nailed in or screwed in, and all of a sudden that satisfying click happens. That's what this feels like. And it is my strong contention that he is revealing information. It's not surprising that just yesterday I read a comment from someone who in the comment said this is exactly what is going to happen. They already had this information that I was planning on giving, and I've been planning on giving this information for over a month. They already had it. This is what God is doing. He's releasing information, and I'll tell you one other thing before we go. I said it's a year that he has shown us, and I believe that, from November 11th of this year to November 11th of next year. Do not be surprised if he narrows down on that. Remember what he told Sardis. If you do not watch, you will not know the hour of my coming, okay? That means if you do watch, we will know. We will know the general time frame. We've been given a general time frame. I would not be surprised if that shrinks a bit as we go along. He is in the mood for giving out information through the Holy Spirit, and we have to be open to accept it. I'm not trying to, force you to accept what I'm presenting here. Consider it and look at it, and you'll see that what's about to come on the earth is the day of the Lord and the rapture of the church, and then the final program that brings Israel back into the kingdom.